it's time for me to theorize. No more reactions, no more nothing. We're going to be doing a little theory on our own. Five Nights at Freddy's Secrets of the Mimic is coming out next year. And with that, we're possibly going to know a lot more about the new star of the show, the Mimic. Move aside, William, you had your time. But what can Secret of the Mimic can tell us? What can we know about the Mimic and how will it affect the franchise moving forward? Sit back, relax, grab a snack, and walk with me on this one because ironically this is more speculative more than theorizing, but I feel like it's interesting nevertheless. So, without further ado, let's keep going. Now, I have done a reaction video before. I have done a reaction video about the teaser before. So I will leave a link to the description box below where you guys can go and see my initial reaction to it. I actually was pretty stoked seeing this, and I finally got my chance to reacting to it. But in case you don't want to watch that, here's what happened. We did a little reaction about the teaser, and we know pretty much a few things regarding Secrets of the Mimic. One, the fact that the picture you're seeing right in front of you right now is the Mimic. And as you can see, he looks completely different from where we last saw him in DLC Ruin in Security Breach. In Security Breach Ruin, he looked dusty, dirty, old, like lost to time basically. But here in Secrets of the Mimic, he looked fresh out the box, no pun intended. Got that new animatronic smell. So we already know that this game is a prequel. But in case you want more of that, we also, after many tries of freeze framing at the end of the video, we discover a 4-digit code. Or a 4-digit number, and that code was 1979. 1979. So this game presumably takes place around 1979, which is interesting to say the least, because it's now between two events that we know is happening in the timeline. It's happening after 1970, which we know is Fright Fest. Either it's releasing to the public or it's just arriving on Utah, but most likely it has been released to the public. But this game is taking place before the events of 1983, which is the most crucial point in the FNAF timeline, because that's where Crying Child, William Afton's son, gets his head bitten in the event that we know now is the Bite of 83. And with that event caused everything else. So it's interesting, to say the least, that this game is taking place between those two events. But what can we actually know about this? What can we actually know about this game? Well, how about the fact that the Mimic kinda almost operates just like the puppet? I know it sounds crazy, and I mean, like, yes, it just feels like a no-brainer. If you compare the puppet now with the Mimic here in his prequel clothing, it does feel like the puppet and the Mimic do look kinda do look similar to each other. There's also the fact that the Mimic and the puppet are now the two animatronics that we now know who like coming out of boxes, and not just any boxes, but musical boxes playing the same similar tune. Especially one that requires a wind-up. So that's 2 for 2 recently now. And the fact that the Mimic and the puppet both tend to have flexibilities. They both have flexibilities that other animatronics don't. I mean, yeah, you can say Ennard, but if we're going to be honest, Ennard didn't really felt like an animatronic. Like, he is, like, don't get me wrong, he is, but he's an amalgamation of all the other animatronics. So it's like, yeah, the puppet and Ennard, the puppet and the mimic just feel like full-blown animatronics that don't need to be combined by the other animatronics to do the things they do, if you know what I mean. So, my question is Secrets of the Mimic also going to be telling us the story about the puppet? Because if we have to be honest with ourselves, the puppet could actually fit in a carnival theme style game. I mean, like, it always drives me insane that the puppet just feels so out of place from the crew, from from their introduction in FNAF 2. Yes, as the games continue and the story gets more complicated, that MatPat is throwing a fit, and everyone is just pleading for everything to make sense. We gradually just agree that the puppet's just here to stay, but it just feels weird when out of all the rosters of bears, rabbits, chickens, and foxes, and whatever Balloon Boy was, the puppet just feels so out of place. But if we assume if the puppet is going to show up in Secret in the Mimic, a carnival-ish style game, then yeah, the puppet does genuinely feel like they could probably be in this game. In fact, if you were paying attention of the recent games, the puppet seems to be making a comeback. We have nightmare puppet dolls throughout the past 3 games, black and white striped wires in the Pizzaplex. And, the fact that these two look so similar with each other. There's also the fact that there's also the sticky room, which, yes, I know MatPat does seem to be thinking that that could be for an animatronic boy, but what I think is most likely is that that could very much be the Mimic's room. Really think about it. I feel like it could be the Mimic's room. Now, I get it. How could that be the Mimic's room? Well, we know for a fact that the Mimic is a learning robot. The Mimic may have started with just simple ones and zeros, but gradually starts learning about words, drawings, and everything. Because in the book where it's debuted, we saw that Edwin, who might be a stand-in for Henry, made the Mimic to basically watch over his kid, similar to how the puppet was made to watch over his daughter, Charlotte Emily. And as we can clearly tell from the the Tales in the Pizzaplex books, we saw pretty much that the Mimic is a learning robot. It can learn, be taught, just like a simple child. So I wouldn't put it past me to say that the sticky note room could possibly be the Mimic's. There's also the fact that in Security Breach, we've just been seeing more and more of Nightmare Marion, to be honest. The fact that there was multiple Nightmare plushies scattered throughout the Pizzaplex, and the fact that the staff bots, once later down in the game, looks very much identical to Nightmare Marion. Black streaks and everything, symbols basically having painted on "in your dream" written on their chests. Like, what was that about? Why is the puppet now showing up? I'm predicting that maybe, just maybe, the Mimic and the puppet have a bigger connection than we realize. Now, I'm not trying to say that I'm not trying to say that, the Mimic is trying to impersonate someone like Charlie. Let's be honest. Everyone was basically going crazy about the mere mention of Gregory being a robot, and to bring back Charlotte to be a robot would be also kind of crazy. But I wouldn't really pass this game. But that's not my theory. Shoot, I'm pretty sure what's gonna happen is that we're going to see more robot kids, but that's not what this theory is about. I feel like maybe, just maybe, the mimic might be an early version of the puppet. And I'm thinking all these nightmare references are connected to the idea that the mimic is associating itself with the puppet. I believe the mimic plays a part in helping Vanny kills Glitchtrap. And if this idea is true, then it makes more sense why the mimic would want to do this. In Fazbear Frights, we see Charlotte, or rather like the puppet mask, but by association I guess Charlotte in a way, was the one to finally done in William Afton. So we have the mimic associating itself with the puppet. And therefore, its actions while possessed as Charlotte, it's adapting to do what Charlotte wants to do, destroying Glitchtrap, finally putting the madness to rest. Charlotte wanted to finally bring down William Afton, to stop him from taking the lives of so many children. And the mimic, copying that goal, would want to do that. It's not it's like basically making the mimic not good, but also not bad. Some sort of like in a gray area, if this theory is true. But I want to bring up another idea. Because really now think of it, it's interesting now. The mimic and the puppet, if they are led to be believed to be the two main attractions of this new upcoming game, they are basically now a duel. We have duels before. We had Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. We got Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie. We got the Sun and Moon. Heck, I'm pretty sure the Sun and Moon could eventually show up in Secrets of the Mimic. I mean, it doesn't feel so out of place, to be honest. Shoot, we know in Help Wanted 2, it was their minigames. Well, basically the Ferris, not the Ferris wheel, but what was that called? You know the game I'm talking about. We know that there had to be some sort of fire that happened in Fright Fest. So I feel like in some way that's what's going to happen in the game. At the end of the game, whether we're going to have multiple endings or not, we're going to what's mostly going to happen is Fright Fest is going to burn down to the ground, because we've been seeing too much imagery of fire happening in Fright Fest. But what does that have to tell us about the mimic and the puppet? Well, here's what I think is going to happen. I think it's possible. Maybe it's possible. I'm not sure it is, but it could be that the mimic might be the new puppet. Now I know it's a little callback to my first ever theory I ever done in this channel, where I was basically saying that the Moon animatronic was going to be the new puppet. That was before we saw Mr. Sun and all that. But I'm more inclined to say that the mimic is going to be the new age version of the puppet, or should I say, the dark reflection of the puppet. It's going to be more Nightmare-on than it is the mimic, than it is the puppet. Because it just feels right. Why is it that we're seeing dark imageries of the puppet? Why are we seeing more Nightmare-on than it would be the puppet? It strikes me odd, because we know that from one of the lines that you get when you lose to Nightmare-on, Nightmare-on explicitly said that I am the dark reflection of what you have created, or somewhere around the lines. Nightmare-on is the reflection of the puppet. But it's the fact that we're seeing more Nightmare-on than it is the actual puppet makes it seems that the mimic could potentially be some sort of way. it could be that the Mimic will be this new age. This could be this new age, puppet, but this time not as a force of good, not a protector, not a giving of life. It's the Mimic is going to be the agony version associated with the nightmares, and more associated with death. The Mimic, the Mimic is not a protector like the puppet. The Mimic is just going to be some sort of monster that we have to be fearful for the games to come. The Mimic is the taker of life, essentially. I will say this though. I will say this. I would prefer if Secrets of the Mimic just sticks with just two animatronics, the puppet and Mimic. That would be like simple enough, because I don't think we need more animatronics to tell the story. But let's be honest, we're not going to pass it with this game. Every FNAF game that comes and follows will add more variations of Freddy, Foxy, Chica, and Bonnie. So it's like, I wouldn't be past. Heck, they'll probably just make some new ones. They'll probably introduce the balloon characters. You remember those? Yeah, it was pretty weird that Funko was selling all those, and it's like, well, they never really appeared in the games. But now it looks like that they are going to be in the games. It could be this game. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if they bring back Carnival Freddy too. Or I guess Carnival Freddy, aka Lefty, if it's believed that Lefty is Carnival Freddy, but just all burnt up. Heck, Miss Hippo might also show up. Heck, I wouldn't even pass them if they bring back the mediocre melodies. They were around that era, so I don't blame them. But I guess there's also another thing, but we'll probably make that a different theory, because we're talking about the Mimic. We're talking about the Mimic, and only the Mimic here. But, okay, so... Alright, so what can we now know about this? Like, I'm basically saying that the Mimic is going to be the dark reflection of the puppet. Instead of giving gifts, giving life, instead it's the Mimic taking gifts and giving death to all of us, essentially. So why would the Mimic attack us now in the past? Because I'm pretty sure there are no such things going on. I don't think William Afton has done anything in the past. I don't think William Afton has committed any murders yet in 1979. I don't think William Afton has done anything all that. So, Segway says, why is the Mimic going after us in this new game? What did we do? Well, it might be possible that the Mimic saw something. The Mimic may have saw a crime, to say the least. The Mimic may have saw someone taking someone's life. And the Mimic, per its name, will mimic that and would try to go after our player. Now, I will be making a different theory on who I think we'll be playing as, because I have some ideas. I have some choices, some possible than the others. But it just feels like the Mimic has seen something. Kind of like how the puppet must have seen what William Afton has done to Charlie. But now that's something that the Mimic and the puppet now share. They witness something that changes their behaviors, ending them being in the same event. So, yeah, I feel like that's possibly going to be it, to be honest. So that's gonna be what I'm thinking. Leave down in the comments below what you guys think. Do you think the puppet and the mimic have more connections than what I bring up? Because I don't know, guys. Like, I feel like the puppet and the mimic are just getting drawn more and more to be more important in this new era of FNAF. We all thought that the puppet was done after Ultimate Custom Night. We all thought it was over, finito, done. But now we're seeing imagery of Nightmare On popping up in the recent games. We're seeing more of the dark side of Remnant. We're seeing we saw Shadow Bonnie, we saw Shadow Freddy. We're seeing Nightmare On. And there might be a chance that the Mimic could potentially be the new age puppet. We could be seeing the Mimic being the dark reflection of the puppet, just like how Nightmare On is. So leave down in the comment section below, like, what do you guys think? You think there's more of a connection there? Or what do you guys think about the secret of the Mimic? As always, make sure you like the video so I know you guys enjoy. Comment down below your thoughts about everything. It could be, hey, I mean, if you guys say something that caught my interest, I'll do a video about regarding your solvings, to be honest. And subscribe. We're trying to upload daily, and you don't want to miss out on the next theory, because I think there is more to talk about this game. This is 1Gamer54 signing off.